Welcome, Josh Stanton, Porsche Carrera Cup driver. Thank you very much for coming on the show and getting involved. But yeah, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Firstly, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a long while. I've been trying to organise this for a while, but I've been very busy. But yeah, looking forward to having a chat and chewing the fat, all things racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my first question, as it very often is on my interview show, is how did you first become interested in motorsports?
So my dad and my uncle did a bit of racing when I was younger. Really, they raced the TVR Tuscans a while ago, and then my uncle went on to do Le Mans in the DeWalt liveried TVRs, and my dad was part of the pit crew. So I've always kind of been around cars from that sense, and then started up karting when I was about 12 or 13. Did a couple of seasons, just kind of club level. Stopped to do GCSEs, A levels, etc., and then did a season, and then kind of a very short season because of COVID in the minis, in the mini JCWs. So going from no racing straight to the minis
Yeah,
was obviously quite a step. And then got kind of got talking to Team Hard about some options, and we ended up doing Porsche this year, which was completely out of the blue. I'd never driven a rear-wheel drive car, not even a road car. So yeah, that was quite a learning curve. And now here we are. So yeah, it's been a really kind of jam-packed journey. It's been a lot to learn, and just every time I go out on track, I try and learn something because we just haven't quite got the experience yet. But yeah, that's the story so far, should we say?
yeah. And when was it? Would you say that you realised you wanted to race and this was something you wanted to do in the future?
I've always really had a thing for cars and racing, and I kind of kept it quite quiet and always enjoyed karting and stuff, and going to parties and all that kind of stuff. And whenever we did activities with the family or friends, oh, can we go karting? Can we go karting? All this kind of stuff. So I've always had a passion for it and a love for it, and played racing games and all that kind of thing. And I never thought it would really be a reality um, until I begged Dad. I begged and begged and begged. Can I get my race license? Can I get my race license? So for my birthday one year when I must have been 17, 18 maybe, I got my race license. I was like, yes, great. And then it was kind of like, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought,
Yeah,
actually, in terms of driving the car, but also I thought once you've got your race license, that's it, you're racing, but you're not, because you've got to try and find this budget. And I had no idea how big this budget really needed to be. Um, and then I was just incredibly lucky to, with Evolution, my main sponsor, that they kind of were like, yeah, do you know what? We're really up for this as well. And then we've just been on this amazing journey through minis, through to Porsche. So that was kind of how it went. I never really thought it could happen, and now it has. Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned a minute ago budget, and I think we all know, whether we've competed in motorsport or like me with fans watching, that money's a big part of racing. What advice would you give to people that are in sort of a similar situation to you when you first started, of not really knowing where to start, and the best ways to start, really? Yeah,
Well, and firstly, it is hard. It is really, really hard. And I'm incredibly lucky to be one of a few people that have got a really amazing sponsor behind them, and that's incredibly lucky. But you have to work very hard at it. I remember when before I really got in contact with, before I spoke to Evolution, I was firing out 50 emails a day, probably, just purely just asking for something. Asking for partnerships, at literally anything that I could do to try and get something in return. And you might get 50 emails that you send out in one day, you might get 2 replies, 48 of them won't reply, 2 of them might reply, and there'll be no. But it's that one email that does pay off, and then all of a sudden you're racing, isn't it? So
yeah,
you've just got to really persevere with it. You've got to be aware that not everyone, especially in these times, not everyone is wanting to part with their hard-earned cash, but there is someone out there that will, because they either have a passion for motorsport, or they see the value in the marketing and the branding, in the hospitality side of things, all that kind of stuff. They see the value in return for that. So work really hard at it. Get yourself a really good proposal. That's something that really, really helps. Get some statistics. So the amount of viewers, for example, if it's on the TOCA package, get all the TOCA statistics, the amount of TV viewers, airtime, all that social media views, all that kind of stuff, compile it into a document, do various different things, be it a bronze package, a gold package, a silver package, platinum, whatever it is, for varying amounts of money and branding and how many tickets you get and all this kind of stuff. And you've got to work really hard at it, but eventually it will come through and you'll find someone that's really interested. But also sell yourself as a driver, because it helps to have a personality. I suppose you look at some of the most successful drivers, sponsorship drivers, they've got a personality, because as a big corporate company, they're not wanting to just buy into a space on the car. They're wanting to buy into a personality as well, so that you've got a story and something to follow. So I think being yourself, don't be afraid to meet these companies. Don't be afraid to go to the offices or knock on doors with a proposal and put a face to the name, rather than just a blanket email. That can help too.
Yeah, absolutely. I find all of this stuff really interesting, because we don't see much of this on TV, or even too much of it when we go to a circuit. You obviously mentioned personalities, and I was going to ask, what do companies look out for when looking to sponsor a driver? Because it's not always about who's the fastest and who can win the most races. Obviously that helps, but yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think I think you're right. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to win every race just to get a sponsor, because I think what's important as well is how you interact with that company, how you portray yourself. Whether it be you get, say you get one interview on TV or social media throughout the whole season, how you conduct yourself on that interview is going to be incredibly important. If you've had a rubbish race, say you've got taken out, and you come in and you throw your helmet in, your gloves, and you're really grumpy and all this kind of stuff, does that reflect well on the company that's sponsoring you? No, it doesn't. So if you can hold yourself in a really professional manner, hold your head high, be positive, I think that really acts well in your favor. You don't have to be the fastest driver on the grid, but if you can do the things that I mentioned with the proposals and be very professional in the way that you do things, but also have a really good demeanor about you in the paddock, how you present yourself, whether you're smart, when you're smartly dressed, if you go to a corporate function, make sure you're on great form, all those kind of things. They're only going to be, be in your favor. They're not going to do anything against you. And I think that's a really important factor to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I found that really interesting. You mentioned mini challenge. So your first season in that, was it last season, or was it 2020 or 2019?
2019.
2019. Yeah. So when you were starting that up, what is it that made you choose for mini challenge, and what actually goes into consideration when sort of going into a new season and working out what you want to race in?
So really, it kind of went. I got my race license, and then I was away at university, and Dad actually went to it was the last round that raced at Rockingham, and Dad actually went. He said, "I'm just going to have a look," and I'd always kind of wanted to go rear wheel drive. That was really where I wanted. And we always thought Ginetto, and that was the kind of the route. And then all of a sudden, Dad sent me this photo of this Mini, and I can remember it now. It was green and chrome. And he sent me this photo, and I thought, "Oh, do you know what? That looks good." And then he sent me a video, and I thought, "Oh, that sounds good." And then Dad got talking, and it turned out someone in the Mini paddock, Rhea, who is now who's the championship coordinator, he knew from when he was racing back in Tuscans. They had a conversation, things went further, and then all of a sudden, next thing I knew, I was testing a Mini. So it kind of went that way, and it was amazing. It taught me so much, so much. But that's kind of how it came about. It was never right. That's what we were going to do. But then we went and we saw the cars and we heard the cars and we watched the racing and thought, do you know that's a brilliant championship. That. So I'm really glad we did it actually. And it was two really good years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a brilliant championship. I'm really glad it's on the Toka package now. I think last season 2021, got to get used to saying that now. I sort of really got into it, and the championship, I was lucky enough to interview quite a few of the drivers. What would you say is the main reason for it being such a great championship?
I think, well, firstly, the racing. It's proper kind of touring car racing. All the cars are identical. You know what you get when you get the BTCC, and sometimes you get the Infinity, which is just up the road. It's an amazing car, or the BMW, like it was a few years ago. and you get those kind of disparities, which can make for great racing, but sometimes it can make it a little bit tricky. Whereas in the minis, because everything is identical, it just makes for really good racing. The cars, I can't tell you how difficult they are to drive. I know it only looks like a mini, and everyone thinks, God, it's a mini.
It's ironic you say that. Sorry to interrupt, but all the JCW mini drivers that I've interviewed, everyone has said exactly the same. Whether they've been in the championship for a few years or if it's been their first season, they've all said how difficult they are to drive. So
they absolutely are. Honestly, I can't. It just doesn't make sense to describe it, but they're just so snappy, and they've got loads of power, and the kind of push understeer you get that goes to snap oversteer and all this kind of stuff. It makes them really hard to drive. But when you're right on the limit, it makes the racing amazing.
Yeah.
But because it's the mini touring car kind of esque thing, there is a lot of dooring each other and properly close racing, which is amazing. But also there's a lot to fight for. You're racing on the Toka package. There's a huge amount of kind of viewing and spectators and that kind of stuff, and a lot of potential for you to get recognized.
Yeah.
So you see some really good, hard, aggressive racing, and it taught me a lot racecraft wise, because I was very inexperienced. It taught a lot of racecraft and that kind of thing. But yeah, they're fun cars to drive, shall we say? They're brilliant fun. The championship have done really well with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the championship continues to grow. I know you're obviously elsewhere, which I'm not actually going to come on to. Obviously, the Porsche Carrera Cup. Now, you spoke about wanting to do rear-wheel drive racing. What was it that made you want to move over to the Porsche Carrera Cup?
To be honest, I always thought Porsche was unattainable. I really did. You hear these stories in the paddock. Stories go around in the paddock. Everyone knows, and you hear of these astronomical budgets. To be honest, and you think no chance. And then all of a sudden, we, just through a friend, we got talking to Tony at Team Hard, and the budget was it's still high. Please don't get me wrong, but it wasn't what we thought, and we thought, do you know what, that might be attainable if we work really, really hard. So Dad and I sat down and we got talking, and we got talking with Evolution, and they were really keen. And then we just worked really, really hard at proposals and getting things out and trying to collate budget. And I'm sorry to be so crude about budget, but it's the way racing is at the moment. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. But that's the way it is. And we scraped every penny together, and then we managed to do it this year, and it's just been amazing. It's been so good. But everyone looks at Porsche and just dreams, because they're the most incredible cars. They're so fast. They sound amazing. The racing, it actually, historically, the racing struggled a little bit, and it kind of had that stigma of being a bit of a GT racer, with the gaps a bit further back and not much. But I think everyone will agree the last 2 years, really, the racing has been touring car level, like properly kind of, getting close and really good overtaking and things like that. So which has been a huge bonus, because I think it's really added to the championship, which has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, being in the Porsche Carrera Cup in 2021 must have been actually quite special, obviously being the final season with the current car, which I'll speak about a little bit later on. But obviously, as you said, the championship battle, that was honestly incredible. I obviously saw you at Brands Hatch, and it was brilliant to see the championship finale go sort of right down to the final weekend, which we don't always see, as you said. But how would you sum up your first season in the Porsches?
A learning year, I think. I think we always knew it was going to be a handful, going to be, we're going to need to do a lot of learning, coming from Mini, which front wheel drive, obviously when it slides, you've got to get back on the power. And then all of a sudden, when the Porsche starts to slide, you've got to get off the power. So that was a big learning curve. Obviously the speed. The brakes actually are quite different, because obviously with the Porsche, you've got all the weight at the rear, Mini all the weight at the front. It makes a big difference to the braking performance. So that was a big thing to learn. And and then just kind of the dimensions of the car. Really, it's a big car, the Porsche. You don't really realize it, but it's very wide, quite long. So that was another thing to get used to. But I mean, it's just been the most amazing year. Every time the Porsche steering wheel has a Porsche badge in it. Every time I get in the car, and you know, you've got your helmet on and stuff, and you see that Porsche badge, you really have to pinch yourself, because it's you're driving a race car, you're driving a Porsche. It's like, this is the stuff I used to dream of, which is amazing. And it's just, the cars are just amazing. I just can't, I'm almost lost for words just trying to describe them. They're quite something. But I think we're definitely happy with how the season went. I think we struggled, and we can see that in the results. Really, we struggled towards the start of the season, which was, we knew that was going to happen. You know, we had some really experienced guys around us that have been doing it for years, so we knew that they were going to get off to a good start. And then we started to try and kind of claw them back mid towards the end of the season. Had some really strong results, and I managed to get second in class, which was great, in the championship. So yeah, really happy with the season, and then got to try and bring on next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you obviously spoke a lot about the cars and how they handle. First of all, you obviously mentioned the size of them, because I often think something that's brilliant about the Porsche Carrera Cup, and actually quite challenging, I would have thought, for the drivers, is because these cars are ridiculously fast. They're obviously, as you said, very big, but you guys are racing them on like really tight circuits around the UK. You know, we've got Brands Hatch Indy and, well, Knock Hill obviously in Scotland. That must be amazing, because, you know, where else would you see Porsches racing around a circuit like Knock Hill?
I know. Do you know what, the only place I can, maybe, well, not that I've ever been, but you see Porsche Super Cup, which supports the F1. I think they went to Zandvoort this year.
Yeah.
And that's the only place that I can think of in the world that is so narrow and all this and undulations and stuff, where you might get a feeling for that, like you do in the UK. Because in the UK, you've got some of the most fantastic circuits, but you're right, it's very narrow.
Yeah.
The likes of Knock Hill, Alton Park is another one, Brands Indy, as you said. It's a strange thing that you're hurtling around at crazy speeds on these really narrow circuits. It's not what a Porsche should be doing, right? You know, a road Porsche, obviously. But the cars respond really well to it. They're really well set up. They're really well, you know, when the car is right on the limit, on that sweet spot, they're absolutely amazing to drive. Knock Hill was really cool, sending the car over the first corner, and, you know, all four wheels off the floor and that kind of thing. That was pretty cool. But yeah, as you said, you know, they're big cars. You know, when you're actually sat up behind another car, right up behind them, you know, millimeters away, you can't actually see, because the rear wing kind of sits, the car's in front of you's rear wing kind of sits right there. So actually, sometimes you almost have to get out of it a little bit just to be able to see the corner coming up, because otherwise you're just going to plow into the back of them. So that was something to take into account. And that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously we mentioned circuits, and I think we are really lucky with the tracks we visit on the Toka package. But did you have a favourite track you visited in the Porsches?
I think Brands GP was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because obviously you don't get to race there very often. You don't get to test there at all, really. That's pretty cool out the back. It's so fast. And if anyone that hasn't walked it, or at least gone out to the back, please do, because to understand the undulation and the blindness and the speed out the back there is pretty cool. And then Knock Hill, there's nowhere like it, is there? It's crazy. You look at it and think, that shouldn't be that should work, and it does. It's just the most amazing circuit, and the way the Scots welcome you and their passion for racing and that kind of thing, it's pretty cool. So yeah, they would probably be up there, but I try not to have, someone ever asked me what my favorite circuit is, I try not to have one, or my least favorite circuit, because psychologically I try and go into each circuit with a fresh mindset and not think, oh, I'm no good at this circuit, or oh, I'm great at this circuit. I just try and baseline, and we just go from the weekend. I try not to have, but there are some ones that are more fun. Well, they're all fun, but you know what I mean. 35 laps of Brands Indy, you get a bit dizzy.
Yeah.
But, the GP, on the other hand, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Yeah, they're very good choices, to be fair. And actually, we're going to Knock Hill for the first time this season, so I'm really looking forward to watching some of the racing, whether it be at Turn One or the final hairpin, wherever that may be. Where would you say? Obviously, Knock Hill is very tight. Where is the best overtaking opportunity? Would you say it is into the hairpin, if there is one?
Yeah. I mean, the hairpin is obviously a good opportunity. Any driver worth their, you know, worth their merit, which is every driver on the token package, let's be honest, is just going to hug the inside there if you've got to run. Or that's all they're going to do. And to be honest, trying to get round the outside there, all you're asking for is to be put on the gravel. So actually, it's quite unless you manage to get up the inside, it's actually quite a tricky place to overtake, because if you're going to go around the outside, you're going to end up probably with a wheel in the gravel. And if you try and get the switch back, it doesn't always work because of the way the camber is on the on the hairpin. Turn one if you're brave. Turn one if you're really brave. As you go down into Duffers, there's a quick right. It's quite a good opportunity if you can dive up the inside. And then yeah, that's it really. It's more one of those where you've got to pressure someone into a mistake. I think Knock Hill. You know, if you can sit behind someone, for us for the Porsche, it was like 30 something odd laps.
Yeah.
If you can sit behind someone for 25 laps, right up on their engine and their gearbox, they're bound to miss a braking point by a couple of meters. You know, if you can really hustle them, they'll miss a braking point, and that's your opportunity, rather than trying to send a lunge from 15 meters back and locking your brakes. It's harder to do that at Knock Hill. It's more of a pressure circuit, shall we say?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, you spoke quite a lot about the cars. I won't keep you for too much longer. You've been brilliant so far. But you know, how did you find transitioning from the minis to the Porsches? Because from what I've sort of seen on TV and having to go in the sim and stuff, they seem like really difficult cars to drive at times.
Yeah, do you know what they are? Because, as I said, because it's got all the weight at the rear, it's almost like a pendulum. So if it does start to slide, it really slides, and then it can slide back the other way quite quickly. But obviously, it's the way the car works. It's about managing the understeer, because obviously you've got such little weight at the front. As you do get on power and the rear starts to kind of squat, if you imagine it like that, it can kind of pick the front and you'll just wash like this. So you have to be quite conscious of that and adapt your braking and your throttle to compensate for that. But you look at the guys that are right at the sharp end and how they drive the cars. They really throw it in. You've got to be quite aggressive with it to try and get rid of this understeer and use the power of the car to get you through. It was very different driving style in the minis. The minis was very, very smooth, like almost like a single seater. You had to drive it really smooth like this. Whereas the Porsche, you really have to hustle it a bit more. So that was a driving style kind of cue that I had to learn. And yeah, obviously the speed, you know, you're going 40, 50 miles an hour quicker in some places. So just being aware of that, and it being left-hand drive, not right-hand drive, your line into a corner from where you're sat is slightly different. So that takes a while. And little things like that, really. You know, you had a sequential gearbox in the Mini. It's paddles on the Porsche now. So various things like that. Just take a few test days really to get used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I remember, you drove this year's Porsche Carrera Cup car. How did they actually compare? Because they're both brilliant, but the new one I think looks amazing.
It does look good, doesn't it? I mean, I've only driven it once for about 10, 15 minutes. Very kindly, Porsche let us all have a go at Silverstone. It feels a lot more, I want to say refined, but that not to be mean to the other car, because that was to last year's car, which was very, very nice to drive. It just felt whether this was because Silverstone's very flat and there's not much undulation, whether it was because of that, but it just felt very smooth, very nice to drive. More what I imagine a GT3 car a full GT3 car would feel like. But I can't wait to get testing and start really kind of pushing on. It had quite a safe setup on it naturally. So get a proper setup on it and really see what it'll do around Donington, Alton, somewhere like that. But I don't think they'll be too different. I think there's a lot more aero on the new car. So I think that'll mitigate some of the kind of the loss of weight at the front, because it's got a bit more front aero. And yeah, I think until I've driven it kind of on a test day, I wouldn't really be able to say. But from everyone that I've spoken to that has driven it properly, shall we say, they say it's amazing. They say it's brilliant, and hopefully the good racing, long may it continue, because I think that's what we all want as drivers, what spectators, what enthusiasts, what everyone wants, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the new season. My final sort of couple of questions really is, with obviously the new season coming up, what are sort of your aims for the near future? And obviously, in the next few years, what else do you want to achieve? Because obviously you said, I suppose earlier in the interview, that you didn't realise you'd be in Porsches this soon.
No, not at all. So I think, now that we've found a category that we did love the minis, don't get me wrong, but we absolutely love the Porsche. This is really where our passion is. I think stay in Porsche for a few years. If we've got to evolution, keep giving back to them, because ultimately in return that's what they do it for. Keep giving back to them and giving them the return they want. But for us, in terms of driving, keep plodding along, keep learning. I'm under no illusions this year is going to be hard. Brand new car, isn't it? So I think keep fighting for podiums in class, keep fighting for the class wins, see where that sits us. And yeah, just keep developing racecraft and things like that. Really, I like to get in the car. Every time I get in the car is learn something. I have a little black book which I take to every race weekend, and if when I go out, I jot all my things in this black book, and every time I get out the car I put something in, and as long as I do that, I'm still learning, and that's all I want, that's all I can ask for in terms of my racing career. I just want to keep learning, and go from there. So, and then longer term, I mean, the dream is Le Mans. I'll be honest, that's what I want to do. That's up there. But baby steps. I think we've got to keep competing in the Porsche. Hopefully, get some more good results. Keep working hard at that, and then see where we go. But at the moment, I couldn't be happier and more grateful to be in Porsche.
Yeah, good. Well, as I say, thank you very much for coming on the show for an interview. You've been brilliant, and thank you for giving such an interesting insight into everything that goes on behind the scenes. And hopefully see you at a racetrack very soon when the season does finally get started.
Absolutely, yeah. Can't wait for it. Thank you for having me on. I love what you do. I watch all the videos. So give this guy a follow, everyone. He's going places. So thanks a lot for having me, and can't wait to see you at a track soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.